Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, today we are going to try and begin a sugya that is something that I've wanted to speak about for a long time, something that we've touched upon in the past, but now that we have a shir oriented towards simply sugyos that I would like to teach, so we're going to try and open this up. We're going to be looking at the Torah of Rav Tzadok HaKohen Lublin. Now, we've never fully given shirim on Rav Tzadok. We've given shirim on the Ishbitzer. We've given shirim on Radzin, but we haven't given shir on Rav Tzadok, in spite of the fact that Rav Tzadok rests at the very foundation of the way in which the Torah of the Tzadikim comes down. But today we're going to try and analyze a particular point in the Torah of Rav Tzadok HaKohen Lublin. And this is a particular point that reveals a perspective that shapes the totality of Rav Tzadok HaKohen's Torah. But when it comes to Rav Tzadok, it's impossible to convey a full picture simply because of the enormity of his writing project, the radical nature of his chidushim that populate every page of his writing, the extension that his Torah takes and expresses itself through every possible zerem of Torah, from pshat, remez, drash, sod, nigla, nister, history, the underbelly of history, the innermost point of history, the personalities of each and every tzaddik, the time periods of Klal Yisrael's experience, a radical belief in the core of the soul, a radical belief in the secret unfolding of the prophetic impulse at the heart of Torah Sheba'al Peh throughout each and every aspect of Jewish DNA and history, the redemptive qualities of redemption that not only are registered for the future, but populate the present moment in Rav Tzadok's perspective. All of Rav Tzadok's Torah is a world unto itself. Each and every sefer of Rav Tzadok is a world unto itself. But nevertheless, to try and collect different nodal points from across the various svarim, to collect information to create a parts of a configuration of an idea, that will give us insight into what Rav Tzadok is trying to have us do when we contemplate HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The point that I want to focus on from Rav Tzadok HaKohen Lublin is ultimately going to be an answer to what is the purpose of the Kabbalah of the Arisal. What are we doing when we contemplate HaKadosh Baruch Hu? What are we doing when we think about God? What are we doing when we think about the way in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu has revealed himself? What are we doing when we're contemplating the gradations of nothingness into somethingness and somethingness back up to nothingness that we see so often in the Svarim of Hasidim and Kabbalah? Rav Tzadok HaKohen is asking a more preliminary question. What is all of this? What is the purpose of it? Why are we reading all of these things? Why are we learning about Partsufim? Why are we learning about Olam Ha'atzilus and Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya? Why are we learning about Keser and Chachma and Bina and Zer Anpin and Nukva? Why are we talking about these things? What impact do they actually bear on the individual's life? And furthermore, what is the proper way of orienting oneself towards this mysterious information that is coming down? That's the question that I want to start with. What is the spiritual experience for Tzadok HaKohen? What is the apex of the human experience in which it is connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Is it something that's taking place far outside the mind, as the external perspective of Kabbalists might have us think that a person has to exit themselves and run upwards into the transcendent territory? Is it its Sabrachenkeit and a mournful awareness of the human condition that keeps itself stuck in its exilic state, unable to access any form of redemption within itself? Or is it something that bridges the gap between those two polarities? As we're going to see, the radical, revolutionary, profoundly miraculous modern Torah of Rav Tzadok is hidden and nested within this nearly impossible task that he is perpetually, successfully accomplishing, which is holding the Torah at its innermost point, wherein, in its delicate and nuanced nature, it is conveying to the individual exactly what it is that they hope to hear and what they need to hear. One of the elements of Rav Tzadok's teachings is that it is both radically affirming. It gives a person a tremendous amount of chizuk. It gives a person an immense amount of strength within themselves when they recognize that so many of the spiritual anxieties that each and every person goes through are in fact rooted within the grand history of how the Torah has come down. But aside from being incredibly affirmative and strengthening and giving a person strength to find HaKadosh Baruch Hu wherever they are, it's also profoundly convincing. Rav Tzadok has the receipts to show and to support every idea that he's bringing. he doesn't need to do that. His word is his word. As a Talmud of the Meshiloach, as a Tzaddik, his word is his word. We would have accepted the words of Rav Tzadok as they are, but we would have, by force of their revolutionary nature, had a point of skepticism as to where is this coming from. But what Rav Tzadok does is preempts that question by showing you that it's coming from Kol HaTorah Kula. It's coming from the entirety of the Torah. And if you don't believe me, look at all of the interweaving of sources that I'm able to bring in order to prove this point. Rav Tzadok provides us with a therapeutic Torah that is grounded. It's grounded in textual seriousness. It's grounded in a hyper seriousness of how we respect the tradition in which the teachings have been given over. Yet at the very same point, it is so confident and so fundamentally in love with the Torah itself that it knows that the deepest and most redemptive, rehabilitative, transformative, and redemptive notions are buried within the text itself. One need not fly into flights of fancy and create new models of spiritual connectivity. It's rooted inherently within the text itself. And this spiritual experience that Rav Tzadok is going to be teaching us about, Dr. Alan Brill wrote a book, Thinking God. And one of the theses in this book is this element of Rav Tzadok's perspective of spiritual experience, as we're going to see. But one of the things that Rav Tzadok HaKohen Lublin opens up for us is the recognition that the mind of the Jewish individual themselves, is where existence is really taking shape. That it's the mind, it's within the chachma of the mind, the chachma, the wisdom of the mind, the intelligibility of the mind's capacity to think and process and come to terms with ideas and undo previous ideas, and by way of the mistaken preconceptions come to a deeper understanding of the idea. To live spiritual ideas like a sugya in the Gemara with shakla vatarya and questioning and answering and refinement. That idea-making process, the process of thinking itself, is the place in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be revealed to the person. The mind of the individual, that place of the chelek Eloi kai mimal mamish, that place where, as Rav Tzadok takes fundamentally seriously as all of the tzaddikim who preceded him and all who follow him, that literally means what it means, that there is an element that extends from within the territory of the infinite by way of the secret of Hishtalshalus and Tzimtzum. As we're going to see, Tzimtzum plays a fundamental role here, but through the wondrous possibility of Hashem concealing himself for the sake of revealing himself in a bite-sized, manageable, pointed way, that pointed expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's revelation, what we call the Shechina, that's within the mind of the individual. That's taking shape in the thinking process, in the unfolding process of processing spirituality in real time. How is it that my neshama is receiving these ideas? What is the interpretive, translational space of my neshama offering to me from these ideas that are coming down? And the mind of the Yid, the mind, the head that is refined with words of Torah, the mind that has oriented itself to the shape of the Torah itself, through lumdis, through the intellectual deepening of our encounter with information and texts and battling to get to the core of the text, that becomes a kli, that becomes a vessel in which the mind itself is transformed into the very site of divine revelation. For this reason, we see that Rav Tzadok HaKohen Lublin, for one of the reasons, plays a fundamental role as a certain crossover element in the history of Judaism. That Rav Tzadok, his life, like all of the tzaddikim, their lives reflect the teachings that they're conveying as well, because there's always a connection and a mirroring of the Oros and the Kalim. So if there was a particular Torah that Rav Tzadok HaKohen Lublin had to bring down that would bridge the gap between polarities of Jewish experience of the Torah, then his life is also going to be reflective of this. And we know that Rav Tzadok HaKohen Lublin's life started off as an adherent to the path of the Vilna Gaon, as clear from his earlier writings and his references to the Nefesh HaChaim and his familial orientation, seeing Torah as Torah was the fundamental thing that a person needed to do, to learn Torah, to study the text, to engage in the deepening of an understanding of the text itself, that world of Lita, that world of Torah, that world of Limud HaGemara, Lishma, and descending down into the textual antinomies and awakening from within the text itself, the dvekus of the mind. But then Rav Tzadok HaKohen Lublin underwent a trauma of his own, and there was a cause of causes that invigorated within him a desire to leave where he was at. He was seeking out a divorce from his wife as a result of holding himself to a level of purity and a level of kahuna that was what was really taking place in the times of the Beis HaMikdash. And as we're going to see, the ability to live with the future within the present is a fundamental mark of Rav Tzadok HaKohen Lublin's teachings, which is perhaps why we see that Rav Tzadok held of himself a certain level of kahuna and kedusha that was not necessarily relevant to present-day reality, but when you're the Kohen Gadol Lublin, that doesn't mean that you're operating in present-day reality. You're drawing the future of the actual binyan Beis Hamikdash into the present moment of Churban, and therefore a person who lives on that level of alignment is going to be susceptible to the degrees and boundaries that are needed in the times of the Beis Hamikdash mamish. And in this seeking out of seeking a heter me'er abanim and seeking a way to start his life again, and in his process of trying to find the heter me'er abanan to enable him to move on to the next shlav in his life, Rav Tzadok HaKohen Lublin encountered none other than the Meshiloach Rav Mordechai Yosef, Liner of Ishbitz, who became his Rebbe. And what happened at that point seems to be that there was a shift from all of the orientation towards the Torah itself. And in Ishbitz, and this is clear from the writings of the Meshiloach as well, that one undergoes a process in which they understand that Chidushay Torah and the processing of Torah and the learning of Torah and the Sha'ashuei HaTorah are all taking shape within the mind itself, are all taking shape and developing new perspectival shapes in which the human being is going to encounter experience. And every Chiddush Torah, every birur, every clarification of a sugya of life, which is an experience that I find myself in, is not only to uncover a Chiddush in Torah and the externality of Torah, but rather it's to renew my mind to draw down new lights of spiritual awareness, which is in and of itself the Torah, which gives me the ability to uncover more of my inherent bond to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so prior to entering into the Torah of Hasidus, Rav Tzadok HaKohen Lublin lived within the space of Sha'ashuei de Arisal, the pilpul of Torah, the lumdus of Torah, the hyper-significance of the textual reality of Torah. And it seems perhaps that through the path towards Ishbitz, and in Ishbitz specifically, what Rav Tzadok uncovers is the reality that all of these divrei Torah, all of the thinking about Torah, all of the thinking about God, all of the thinking about unity are all not only ideas outside of the mind, but rather they are ideas that are taking shape within the mind, and that which takes shape within the mind is ontological in its reality. The Torah, prior to Rav Tzadok coming to Ishbitz, the Torah, what was ontological. The Torah, learning the Torah, what was going to awaken the spiritual influx from above to below. Going towards Ishbitz and transforming that Lamdas HaTorah through the lens of Ishbitz was the awareness that it's the contemplation of the Torah itself that's going to draw down God into my own mind. And when I draw God down into my own mind and I have more of a grasp and a face-to-face reality with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's infinite presence, in that point, that's the true Gilui of the Torah. That's the true illumination that the Torah provides. And therefore, Rav Tzadok HaKohen Lublin bridges both of these worlds of the Torah providing the space in which the influx of spiritual light is going to come down, as well as the thinking mind itself being the site in which the spiritual influx is going to come down. And it's not a stira, because for Rav Tzadok, the mind itself becomes a chefza of Torah. And therefore, it's just the question of where is the place of the Torah taking shape? Is it taking shape externally through the process of limud, lishma, or is there something more subtle taking place to the degree that every ounce of Limud HaTorah is an awakening of a moment of spiritual revelation within the mind of the individual, which not only conveys more information, but provides more information that actually informs the very shape of reality that is formed through the perceptual vision that emerges from the mind of the individual themselves. And for this reason, we see that Rav Tzadok HaKohen Lublin has been accepted in both the world of Lita and in the world of Hasidus. One of the biggest miracles in the world is that for whatever reason, and it's in particular for the reasons that we're saying, it seems, that Rav Tzadok HaKohen's Torah, which was fire like the Mei Shiloach was fire, As my brother, who gave a number of shirim on Rav Tzadok HaKohen Lublin, says that the biggest chiddush of Rav Tzadok is how big the Meshiloach must actually be. And my brother-in-law has been giving shirim on one sefer from Rav Tzadok HaKohen Lublin, Tzidkas HaTzadik, and that sefer is deep enough to want to complete and then go back and start again. Each and every sefer of Rav Tzadok is so large and so illuminative, and that just reveals to us how large and how illuminative his Rebbe, the Meshiloach, must have been. But the Torah of the Meshiloach is a radical Torah. It's a Torah that's drawn down from the Heilige Kotzker, from Rav Simcha Bunim of Pshischa, from the Yid HaKadosh, from the Chozeh Lublin, from the Rebbe of Melech, from the Heilige Magid, from the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh himself. And that Torah suddenly is now being quoted and used as in the guise of a Bal Machshava and being taught in Olamos HaYeshiva of Lita, when Rav Dessler, Schusi Agan Aleinu, again, one of the big crossovers in history, someone who was Eish Lahava for the Torah of Chabad, for the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov, and ultimately for the Torah of Rabbi Nachman and the Torah of Rav Tzadok and the Torah of the Meshiloach, when Rav Dessler came to Eretz Yisrael and he was appointed to be the mashgiach in the yeshiva of Panovich, the first drasha that he gave, he got up and he taught the teachings of Rav Tzadok HaKohen Lublin on Shimshon. Some of the most complex, theoretically antinomian notions of a unity that is so profound that it takes away any sense of Bechira, and he taught it in a mainstream yeshiva, and he there began a process of drawing down the depth of light that Rav Tzadok HaKohen Lublin drew down into this world from all of the tzaddikim that he was drawing from, allowing for this illuminative light of the Torah to bridge both the space of Olam of Lita, which is the Torah itself, and the Olam of Chasidish, which is the mind itself. That's the Torah of Rav Tzadok HaKohen Lublin. Rav Tzadok HaKohen went, and after meeting the Meshiloach, he basically went into an attic, and in that attic he learned and learned and wrote and wrote and wrote, to the degree that Rav Tzadok entered into a place of Oilamecha Tira B'chayecha. He entered into a place of Gan Eden, where Gan Eden was present, like the Heilige Vitebsker, like the Heilige Tzadikim. Gan Eden was present within the mind of Rav Tzadok. In the Sha'ashuei HaTorah, in his learning of Torah, he was living an illuminated perspective of being in Gan Eden. And the reason for this is the beginning of the sugya that we're going to look at. The beginning of the sugya is that Rav Tzadok keeps us very focused on the 5 elements of the neshama. The self is a composite thing. We know this. The self is a complex thing. The self is a layered thing. The way that we typically orient ourselves to the layers of the self are that there are 3 lower levels and then 2 upper levels, which compose a unit of 5. The 3 lower levels are going to be the nefesh, the ruach, and the neshama. And the 2 higher levels are going to be the chaya and the yechida. Now, the nefesh represents the vitality of the body itself. And for Rav Tzadok, that becomes a hyper-essential place. The body, eating, relationships, speech, silence, all of the physiological elements of human existence was fundamental to Rav Tzadok. That was the level of the nefesh. Then there was the level of the ruach. The ruach was the place of emotions. Now, the ruach was fundamental as well. The ruach was the place of the awakening of the spiritual fluidity within the stricture of what Malchus represented and the action orientation of the nefesh itself. Then came the neshama. The neshama was the heart. The neshama was the heart of the yid. For Rav Tzadok, the innermost point of the heart of a yid, that neshama shenasata bi tahirehi, that is the place in which the human being is most themselves. That is the point of encounter. It is within the heart itself that a person encounters their deepest relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in the place of Bina, the Bina of the Leiv, to understand things through my own perspective of spiritual orientation and spiritual functioning. But that's not enough. The Leiv, as we're going to see, is the territory of chisaron, is the territory of yearning, is the territory of concealment and darkness and ga'aguim. That's not so much what we're going to be talking about today. We can talk about that another time, Rav Tzadok's perspective of deficiency and the sense of deficiency, which brings about fullness afterwards. But for today, we're talking about fullness. Because for Rav Tzadok, the Leiv becomes the ikar place where a person is going to be most themselves. But the neshama is still part of the lower quadrant of the self. We know that the Nefesh HaChaim also hints to us very clearly that the neshama is not simply limited to the lower quadrant of the elements of self, nefesh, ruach, and neshama, but rather it is the bridge that brings us from the lower elements of self and abstracts us back up to the higher levels of self, which are the makifim, which are the chaya and the yechida. So this neshama still operates within the territory of a pnimi. The nefesh, the ruach, and the neshama are all internalized aspects of spirituality. The body can be tamed. The emotions can be regulated to some degree. The contemplation of the mind and the heart's emotional valances can be tamed by way of closing the light on them. But ultimately, those are the things that are embodied. Those have grasp. We have some relationship to them. Even though the neshama is a relationship of bittul, it's still, like we saw in the Mittler Rebbe yesterday, it's bittul hayesh. There's still a sense of self. That leads us to the makifim. Makifim are chaya and yechida. The makifim are chachma and keser. Makifim are ideals that exceed the human ability to grasp them in any formidable way and draw them into consciousness. Consciousness itself, as we grasp it, is stuck within the vehicle of the emotions and the body itself. That's where the neshama rests. It rests right in the mind itself, and it's connected to the heart. It's the mind of the heart and the heart of the mind. But it's not the mind of the mind. The neshama is the heart of the mind. The heart of the mind is the emergent quality of those emotions. The ruach is the embodied experience of those emotions, and the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov and the battle between the drives. And then the Olam Ha'asiyah is going to be where I embody my action. But the Chaya and the Yechida are abstracted and transcendent to the human self. They represent ideals. They represent a cool, calm, and collected deep awareness of the absolute basis and static quality of Hashem's infinite presence. They are not stuck within the rapid shifts and changes and the closing and the opening and the buttoning and the unbuttoning of the lower elements of the pnimim of those integrated parts of the nefesh, ruach, and the neshama. The chaya flows. The chaya is fluidity. The chaya is chaya hachayim. It's a place of bittul b'metzias. It's a place where HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself. And then the yechida is already that point of absolute and inherent mysterious nefesh and connection on the level of keser. But the reason we're framing all of this is because for Rav Tzadok, what we're going to see is that the main place in which the self experiences itself is the lave, is bina. That means the heart of the mind, the emotional intelligence, the processing of information. It's not the heart itself. It's a cognitive quality of emotional experience. It's more embodied. It's more visceral. It's more susceptible to severity and a sense of disconnection. But as we've learned so often throughout all of the shirim that we're trying to share, is that bina, neshama, is not separate from chachma. It's not separate from the chaya. Even though chachma and the chaya, which represents a makif, and the simple nothingness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu seem so fundamentally in opposition to the fiery particularization of the neshama in its bina orientation, nevertheless, the chaya itself is a makif, but it's called a makif karov. Once we abstract ourselves from the categories of nefesh, ruach, and neshama, which are embodied, so then when we go to the level of that which can't be embodied, but those makifim, that which exceeds human grasp, those things which are unknowable, so how could it be that there are two levels there? If it's simply that which is unknowable and that which is not integrated into the compartments of self. So why do we have gradations there as well? Shouldn't it just be one type of makif? Why do we see a separation of the chaya and the yechida? If we're talking about that which is infinitely unified above and beyond the gradations of separation through which we experience reality, so then how can there be separation there? So Zot, the Heilige Tzadikim, that the chaya and the yechida, chachma and keser, represent two different types of makifin, meaning to say they represent two different stages of that which cannot be grasped and that which cannot be held. The yechida, starting from the highest point, represents an unknown that is unknown. It represents something that cannot be incorporated within my present nature of self. It is a beyond what I even conceive of as beyond. And the only way that I can grasp that is by coming to terms with the sense that I cannot grasp that. That's the keser of the lower level, which brings me to the malchus of the higher level. That takes an act of self-abandonment and an abandonment of the mind and mesiras nefesh. The yechida is the makif rachok. It's a surrounding light that is very distant. It's the unknown unknowns, and I don't have any real relationship with it in any way other than by way of its distance. But the Chaya, on the other hand, the Chachma, on the other hand, the world of Atzilus, on the other hand, is not simply a makif rachok. It's not some distant orientation toward transcendental ideal that I have no graspability of, but rather it's something referred to as a makif karov. It's an approximate makif. It's a surrounding light that cannot be incorporated, but it already is a light that I have a relationship with, because chachma enters into the mind for but a moment and then it departs as quickly as it came. But the fact that chachma can illuminate the mind, like that barak hamavrik, like that thunderbolt, and it can illuminate the mind, even though it disappears as quickly as it appears. And even if I can't lay claim to its actual appearance, nevertheless, by dint of the fact that it touches and then retreats back, it betrays the fact that there is a bond with it, that I have a relationship with Chachma. And if I have a relationship with Chachma and I have a relationship with the Chaya, that means that I can draw Chachma into my Bina itself. I can draw this Makif Karov, I can draw this Chachma that exceeds my human grasp and actually draw it into my mind, which can then become a point at which I am drawing more of infinite awareness into my finite representation of infinitude, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu has allowed me to live with my neshama, and I am increasing the infinitude of that point of my conscious awareness. Again, the Bina is the limited framework in which a person holds a connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Neshama shenasata bi tahirahi, chelek eloi kai mima'al, but it's still a chelek, the radical secret that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was able to take a chelek kavyachol of infinitude and implant it within the minimized form of the human being in accordance with their internal experience of nefesh, ruach, and neshama. That's another sugya, and that's another shir, and that's the secret of tzimtzum. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu was mitzamtzem himself into the mind of each and every individual, and in that neshama, within the very nakuda of the heart, which is where the Shekhinah rests, that's chelek eloi kamimal mamish. But it's static. It's static because it's mitzumsum, and that place of spiritual awareness is what it is, and it doesn't have the ability to renew itself to be something more than what it is. It is structured and strictly stuck within the framework in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu has revealed that infinite possibility of the radical secret of the neshama shenasata b'tahirihi, of chelek eloi kamimal. But the chaya is how I draw down something from beyond myself, and I can actually illuminate that chelek eloi kai mimal, and I can extend the territory in which I grasp God, which means that I come to find more infinitude within my own mind. I come to uncover more of Hashem's reality within my own mind. Every time I draw the chaya down, every time I draw down the ability to be mevatel myself beyond what I know, and I enter into that place of the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm not just running up to some transcendental ideal away from my neshama. In fact, I'm drawing the chaya down into the neshama. And when the chaya is drawn down into the neshama, when that first stage of that which I didn't know is now drawn down into that which I knew, that which I knew extends itself to hold the light of that which I didn't know, thereby revealing the porous boundaries of that limited expression of the infinite and extending the territory of my chelek eloi kai mimal mamish. I'm revealing more of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's infinite light within my own mind. The more I come to contemplate, the more I come to grasp what these things mean for me, and I draw them down into my own experience through the lens of my own neshama, my ruach, and my nefesh. In that situatedness, I am revealing more infinite light within a finite container, and thereby extending the parameters and the boundaries of the finite light. This is the radical secret that R Sadok is coming to reveal. The secret of Olamecha Ter B'chayecha, that the spiritual experience is taking place within the mind itself. The mind is the place of the real processing. The mind is the place of the extension of infinite light. And the mind is going to be extended to the degree that it will finally come to understand the vacuity and the emptiness of externalized reality, to the degree that the only thing that truly exists is the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that penetrates deeply within my mind, to come to the place of the Yechida, which is the recognition that Ein Oid Milvado, there's literally nothing other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that Hashem is the same before the creation of the world and after the creation of the world. All of the gradations, all of the separations are theoretical coverings and veils of the mind that prevent me from beholding the true essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light. Rav Tzadok is giving us an informed perspective of the power of our mind, that by contemplating godly awareness and by contemplating the infinitude of God, I thereby reveal more godliness and more infinite light within my mind, and my mind is the engine that shapes the externalized nature of reality, so that when I allow my yichud of my mind to express itself externally onto the period of reality, I am extending the territory of the infinite light. It's all taking place within the mind. The Rebbe Shlita, Rav Yitzchak Meyer Morgenstern Shlita, has said that Rabbi Nachman of Breslov was not able or was not given permission to convey the totality of his teachings. That Basof Kulam Yu Breslov, in the end, everybody is going to be Breslov. But that means that it's waiting towards the Sof for that Torah to be fully revealed. And Manfairol is going to burn until the coming of Mashiach, meaning to say that there's a certain element that is not yet revealed. The Rebbe says that Rav Tzadok HaKohen me Lublin was one of the elements that completed the Torah of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. And there are many other tzaddikim who make the associations between these two tzaddikim as well. And Rav Tzadok himself made the association with Rabbi Nachman by writing notes and hagos on Rabbi Nachman's most internal sefer, which is Sefer Hamiddos, and having copies of Rabbi Nachman's writings, but again, not necessarily quoting him explicitly, but fundamentally rooted in the teachings of Rabbi Nachman. And Rabbi Nachman also teaches us, he gives us a taste of this form of a spiritual experience, which is the reality that it's taking place within my mind. It's taking place within my mind, and that's not to deny its import. It's not to deny its validity. It's not to deny the impact that it can actually have. Adrabah Ibcha Mustaber, it's going to show us the power of the mind to create, to draw down the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It doesn't mean that the mind has a magical power to shift the externality of reality. The mind has the magical power of denying the inherent reality of external reality and coming to see it for what it is, which is Einon Movado, and that's the Nisim and the Neflos. That's the mofsim. The mofsim or the bitulim, to be mavatel yesh ta'ayin, that's the biggest mofis. And when I can transform my mind itself into the seed of the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I can be mishta asheya with the presence of God within my own thinking, within my own bittul of my own mind, through the thinking of my own mind to come to a place of the apex of thought, which can only be thought through by way of the process of thinking, but the process of thinking cannot get me there. There's a Mesiras Nefesh that takes place within thought where the chaya is drawn down, and immediately all of the partiality of the neshama is illuminated in the whole, and there's no longer a difference between the klal and the prat, and that enables me as a prat to then gain more insight of the klalius, of the general principle of all things, even after I awaken myself from that bittul and I find myself back in my partiality. I'm now aware fundamentally that within my chelek, within the small part of my neshama, the neshama shenasata bi tohirihi, the chelek elokai mimal, I've just extended it with an awareness of the chaya, with chachma, which shows me that the boundaries in which I grasp that limited expression of infinitude are in truth infinite in their nature, but I have to hold them. But at the same point, I have to be able to be aware that I can breathe new light into it in every moment. This is the secret of this, is chadshus of Rabbi Nachman. And in one of the places that Rabbi Nachman expresses this most pointedly is the secret of what Chazal tell us, that that in the future the tzaddikim are going to rest with their crowns in their heads. Now, Rabbi Nachman is teaching this teaching in reference to the process of makifim and pnimim, that a person is a pnimi, a person has the nefesh, ruach, and neshama, which are graspable elements of spiritual awareness on the body level, on the emotional level, and on the psycho-spiritual level. But beyond that which can be grasped in an integral way or an integrated way is going to be the chaya and the yechida. The chaya being the makif karov, that which is close, and therefore I have accessibility to it. I can draw it down into lived awareness. And the yechida, which is the makif rachok, which is far from me. Zot Rabbi Nachman, that what does it mean to be masig olam haba? What does it mean to live a life of olam haba and Gan Eden in the mind, of alma da'asi, of the world that is perpetually emerging into the mind of the individual in real time, expanding the perimeters and expanding the boundaries and the borders of what we felt our spiritual capabilities were? That's the pnimim. But when we draw something down, it's a new makif. We draw a new makif into our awareness. And says Rabbi Nachman, this is why we can understand that when Chazal say that in the future the tzaddikim are going to be sitting with their crowns in their heads, theoretically, says Rabbi Nachman, it should be crowns upon their heads. Crown rests upon the head. The grasp is something outside of me. It's the Torah that I have to learn. Rabbi Nachman points out that Adarabba Ibcha Mastaber, from here we see the truth of the matter, which is that Itroseihem biroseihem, the awareness of godliness, the awareness of infinitude, the drawing down of more infinite light, the drawing down and experiencing of Gan Eden in the here and now is within my own mind. It's taking place within my own thinking itself, where the mind becomes a vehicle for the thoughts of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the mind comes to see itself as just the machine that's enabling itself to think the thoughts of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kavyachol. And then that gets drawn back down into the heart, and then the heart becomes the place where my emotions are really just receiving those emotional frequencies, kavyachol, from the Lev Ha'elyon, from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And as Rav Tzadok says, and as R Nachman say as well, that L'cha amar libi bikshu panayas panecha Hashem avakesh, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're speaking to me through me, that my heart and my mind are the neshama. The heart can only reveal itself to be the vehicle of HaKadosh Baruch Hu when it allows that chachma in. But we see that Rav Tzadok was drawing on this very intimate, very private, very humble, very subtle inner awareness of connectivity to God that doesn't necessarily demand an external ecstatic breaking of the rules or the boundaries. It doesn't demand a radical excitement. It doesn't demand movement. It demands a silent, subtle form of thinking and contemplation and a spiritual experience of the educational variety where I am uncovering more and more of what I know about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it's not that once I know enough, I'll then get to the destination. It's the perpetual unfolding process of coming to know more and realizing that I don't know and coming to learn more that is the spiritual experience itself. This brings us to what we're going to be talking about today. We're talking about Rav Tzadok's perspective of what it means to learn Kabbalah, of what it means to grasp with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light. What does it bring down to me? And the place I want to start with, I don't think I have it in front of me, is the first teaching in Sichos Haran. The first teaching in Sichos Haran says, why does David HaMelech say, Ki ani yadati ki gadol Hashem? Why does David HaMelech say, I know that Hashem is great? I know. Why me? Ani daika. And Rabbi Nachman explains that David HaMelech was saying to himself, even I can't convey to myself the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because in truth, only HaKadosh Baruch Hu can send me the ability to behold the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What I thought I knew about the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is limited in accordance to the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that stands to be revealed, because the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that I understand right now is still a panimi. It's an integrated part of the self. But that just means that there's a makif that just rests right beyond the horizon. And when I draw that makif into my mind, what I thought was ungraspable becomes graspable, meaning to say what I thought I knew, I come to terms with knowing that I don't know, and I draw down new awareness of what I don't know, and a new horizon of unknowability appears upon the horizon, perpetually driving me to know more and more that I don't know and that I can't know. And so even I can't tell it to myself, but I certainly can convey it to another person. Ani daika, I can't tell you what it's like. I can convey to another person the secret of Emunah or the secret of unity with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because that secret is the unfolding of godliness within the mind of the individual themselves. And Rabbi Nachman says, just as the Tikkunei Zohar HaKadosh tells us in the Pasuk in Mishlei from Eshes Chayil, which is Noida b'sha'ar im bala, that the husband shall be known in the gates of the city by dint of the power of his wife. What that means is that Noida kol chad lefum shira delay, that each and every person is going to behold God in accordance to the conjecture of their own personal heart. And that means that each and every person is going to be masig, a different chelek of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's going to be fundamentally true. There's no external perspective in which I can measure, other than the Torah itself, there's no external perspective in which I can measure the validity or validate or authenticate my spiritual experience, because I am the territory that is experiencing the singular spiritual experience and revelation of infinitude, which is tailor-made specifically to the partial expression of godliness that my personality reveals in this world. Ki ani yadati, I know, I can't convey it to you. I can't share this with you. And that's the secret of the spiritual experience. For a Tzadok, the secret of the spiritual experience is that it's not something that's taking place out there that can then be identified. That was the Nevi'im. The Nevi'im were able to identify these external things. But the secret of drawing Chachma down into the heart itself is the secret of Chacham Aduf Minavi, that the mind itself conveys a certain potency and force that even the heart of Nevuah can't convey. Ani Daika. So this is the secret of Rav Tzadok's perspective of spiritual experience, that it's taking place within my own mind. It's my own understanding in accordance with my own grasp. Itroseihem biroshehem. When I draw a makif of chaya, of chachma, into my pnimi, of my neshama, I illuminate the limited expression of my soul with the secret of the unlimited continual force of the infinite light that is perpetually descending down into my neshama itself. And so, lo and behold, we know that Rav Tzadok doesn't necessarily quote Rabbi Nachman explicitly, but there's a teaching in Ostes and Machshavas Charutz, which we're going to begin with, where Rav Tzadok says as follows: V'zehu kol chachmatata. This is the whole secret of the wisdom that is experienced below, in the unfolding process of HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealing himself to the mind of the individual, in the mind of the individual. She chachmas Torah shebal peh hashochenes belevavos de bnei Yisrael al yidei hakaros de dilhon. That it is the perpetual unfolding of Torah shebal peh. Reb Tzadok refers to this perpetual flow of Ruach HaKodesh that is descending down from above into the heart through the mind of each and every individual, from the chachma into the bina of each and every yid, as the unfolding process of Torah shebal peh that is expressed within the heart of each and every person from Yisrael. And Hashem doesn't do this for the other nations. V'zehu mistorin shalo da HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'amar misha mistoria biyado hu Yisrael kisoid Hashem li'reyav. And Rav Tzadok continues, and he says that this is the secret mystery of Klal Yisrael. The secret mystery of Klal Yisrael is the mystery of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu holds the mystery of Klal Yisrael in his hands, which is the fact that our hearts become the very place in which Hashem is revealing his ratzon. Where we become the Nevi'im by dint of the fact that it's a Chacham Adif Minavi, that we're drawing down our own awareness. And listen to what Rav Tzadok says here, Kisoid Hashem Li'reyav, because ultimately it's a secret. It's a secret that is not a secret because I'm not holding the secret of unity from Hashem away from you because I don't feel that you deserve to know it, in the sense that that's a secret and that I get to tell it to other people. It's a secret by dint of the fact that it remains a secret even after it's revealed. It's something that cannot be conveyed. Why? Because it is a singularly unique thing for each and every person. So listen to what Rav Tzadok says here. V'yadua medivrei echad kodesh. And we know from the words of a certain holy one, echad kodesh, medaber, desoid hu ma she'efshar legalus klal lezulat. That the true secret of what the word secret means is that it's that which is impossible to share with another person. V'hu ketam ani yadati. And it's based on the pasuk of Ani Yadati, the first teaching in Sichos Aran. Ani Daika, specifically me, She'i Efshar Legalus La'acher, I cannot convey it to another person. V'hu ha'hasaga shaba acher harishus v'hadalus deleiv yodea maras nafsho. And this deep awareness of that individualized sense of godliness is only what comes about after I've worked through my own heart. Ubesimchaso lo yotzariv zar. And nobody can come to understand the joy of the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in my own heart. This is the secret of the taste that is revealed within the heart of the individual, that even they don't know. Even Klal Yisrael themselves. Each and every person's taste in the heart of Klal Yisrael is going to be different, and it's impossible to reveal the taste within my heart to the heart of somebody else. And on this, it's written, it's going to be known within the gates, the understanding of the gates of each and every person's heart, each and every person in accordance to their own understanding. And therefore we say Ani Yadati, Ani Yadati, Ani Daika, the secret of Anihu Veloy Malach, Ani, that each person can point to themselves and say Ani, which is rooted in the fact that the Ani Hashem Elokechem of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is revealing himself through the personality of that individual. And this is the secret of the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the hearts of those who fear him, which is the fulfillment of their own individualized perspectives. Lule de Mistafina, I would say with near certainty that this Echad Kadosh is the first teaching in Sichos Aran. And so we have that Rav Tzadok is rooting his spiritual understanding of what it means to grasp HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this deep notion of the hyper subjective encounter of the objectivity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The subjectivity of it, the drawing it down into my mind, and the demystification of it, and taking it out of its metaphysical, externalized, thickness and allowing it to take shape within the very modest and refined, humble, abstract space of the mind, Rav Tzadok is giving us the ability to think about HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to be fundamentally connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that when I'm thinking about Hashem's infinitude, when I'm thinking about Einoid Milvado, I'm actually drawing down more Einoid Milvado into my life. Now, this takes on a very significant expression when it comes to Rav Tzadok's understanding of the Kabbalah of the Arisal. Because everything that we've said until now is ultimately that there were Nevi'im, and the Nevi'im were able to bring down very objective perspectives of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from each person, Moshe Rabbeinu being the chief of the Nevi'im. But then when Nevuah ended, something new was uncovered, which is the secret of Chacham Adif Minavi, that by drawing down the Chaya of that Makif, Karov, into one's mind, they allow the horizon of infinitude to invade the boundaries of the finite, which allows the finite to shine with its true source of infinitude that shines within it. So now we see that it's the mind of the individual that is going to be the place where they draw down their own personal understanding of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But then we have this reality that there were different tzaddikim, in particular the Arisal, who gave us a language and a way of contemplating HaKadosh Baruch Hu and a way of beholding HaKadosh Baruch Hu that wasn't revealed before. Moshe Rabbeinu understood these secrets. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai draws these secrets out into revelation in the Idra Rabbah, in the Idra Zuta, in the Tzafed Tzniusa, in the Sabed Mishpatim, in all of the different teachings of the Zohar Kadosh. But it's only the Arisal, the third of the Yechidei Hadoros, who came to reveal that which was not revealed before, through the koyach of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, through the koyach of Moshe Rabbeinu, learning Torah from Eliyahu Navi, Besvas HaYaor, on the banks of the Nile River, and through his limud of the Zohar HaKadosh, beholding a true understanding of what it looked like, based on the writings of Ramak, what Idra Rabbah, Idra Zuta were revealing, the Partsufim HaElyonim, the worlds of Olam HaAtzilus, the worlds of Bria, Yitzir, and Asi, a real construct, so to speak, of Tzimtzum and Kav, and Adam Kadmon, and the Oros of Adam Kadmon, the lights of Adam Kadmon that come out from the eyes and the ears and the mouth, Kavyachol, and the Tabor of Adam Kadmon, and the Tzimtzum Sheni, and the Aliyas HaOros from the interiority of Adam Kadmon upwards to allow the Maha Chadash to come and fix the Tikkun and fix the Shira and build the Partsufim of Atik V'nok and Arich V'nok and Abavi Meilon and Zer Anpin V'nok and Yisrael and Yaakov and Leah and Rachel, and all of these elements of the Birurim of the Rapach Nitzoitzos and the ascension of the Man all the way up to the Absag, the Ak, into the Pnimius of Orient Sof to draw down the Koltsama, all of these different things and models and framings and configurations that the Arisal is describing. It seems to be for Rav Tzadok that this is a return back to that original place of prophecy, where there's now going to be an objective frame in which a person must go through in order to behold the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the question is, how do we align that with the fact that Chacham Adif Minavi, that yes, in accordance to some, the Arisal had a din of Navi, but is it that the Arisal is now just giving us different configurations and partsufim that we have to now think about because he thought about them, and now we have to think about those, and just because he thought about them, we think about them, and therefore we can have access to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Or is there something else at play? Now, again, we're talking about very delicate sugyas that are going to be continued to be taught throughout however many weeks we talk about Rav Tzadok, or however many more minutes we talk about Rav Tzadok. But this question about the writings of the Arisal, we're not going to focus so much on the nature of the writings of the Arisal, because to understand the nature of the writings of the Arisal is to go into the core of the Leshem and the Ramchal, and the argument between the Leshem and those who were learning the Ramchal too intensely in those days with regards to the metaphoricity of the writings of the Arisal. What was the Arisal giving us? Was he giving us metaphors that were meant to be understood and abstracted, to understand the kernel of the metaphor, to demetaphorize them, to grab their true meaning and throw away the external metaphor, God forbid? Or are the metaphors themselves the essential teaching, and all we're meant to do is to learn those metaphors? What was taking place? What was the Arisal giving us? How do we align the two ways of looking at it? So that's an ancient conversation, and one that comes into true focus specifically through the writings of the Leshem, where we understand that the words of the Arisal are fundamentally real in the sense that the Arisal beheld true visions like a Navi, And the Arizal beheld and understood the Seder Heshtalshlis in a way that no tzaddik before him was allowed to reveal. And once the Arizal revealed these structures and gave us the conceptual framing to understand that which has always been there and that which has always been discussed by all of the tzaddikim before him, but had not yet found a systematic language in which it was being conveyed, the Arizal system now becomes fundamentally real for us to relate to. But at the same point, it also means something internally for each and every individual that can only be understood from the writings of the Arisal themselves. And so Rav Tzadok is not coming to deny, God forbid, the hyper significance of the words of the Arizal or the worlds that the Arizal teaches us about, like the Leshem claims that certain people who are trying to learn Ramchal too much do, by trying to demetaphorize them and figure out what these really mean psychologically or in terms of how Hashem runs the world. So then we're claiming that all the Arizal gave us were metaphors that were nice but insignificant. Rahman al-Itzlan mehaidaisa, Hashem should protect us from ever thinking that. The words of the Arizal are kipshuto kimashma'am. The only thing is that we have no idea what they mean. They're a mamish kavyachol. We can say that everything that Arizal wrote is real because we have no idea what the Arizal was doing. All we have is the language of the Arizal. And once we hold on to the language of the Arizal, then each and every person has to understand what the language of the Arizal means for each and every one of them. And so Rav Tzadok starts off in Kuntres Sefer HaZichronos with really asking, what was the value of writing and publishing the words of the Arizal? What was the purpose of kind of allowing everybody now to behold the vision in the way that the Arizal envisioned it? Perhaps there are other ways for a person to envision things. Perhaps there are different things. V'ach says Rav Tzadok on Daf Yud Tes, V'ach tov haya lefi daisi, ma shahaya beratzon marino Rav Chaim Vital, shero ratza lahotzi ksavav mirishus klal. It would have been really good if we had followed the words of Rav Chaim Vital, who did not want to publish the writings of the Arizal. He didn't want them to be revealed in the world. But nevertheless, in the times of Rav Chaim Vital, all of the Chachamim disagreed with him, and they spent a lot of time and effort trying to steal the writings from him so that they can be revealed in reality itself. And then Rav Tzadok goes into his understanding of Mahari Sarag and all of the other students of the Arizal who became important in the transmission of these teachings. Rav Sadok continues. He said, really, none of this should have been revealed. But now that it's been revealed, we can't hide it. So what's really happening? What are we supposed to do with the words of the Arizal? Zat the Heilige Rav Tzadok. Aval amisan shel devarim ledaisi ki kimosha Yechezkel alav hashalom kasav parshas hamerkava b'sifro galui la'ayin kol v'she yilmedam kol echad hayodea karua mikra. That really the words of the Arizal, says Rav Tzadok, are similar to the vision of Yechezkel Hanavi. That when he wrote down the words of the Maisa Merkava and revealed it for all to see, it was there for each person to read if they had the ability to read. Ve'ein bazeh mishum pirsam Maisa Merkava. But this does not break the rule of Maisa Merkava. This is not teaching people how to do it. The writings themselves are not the end-all be-all. They're just the perception, the vision that was beheld by the prophet in the eye of the prophet, a real perception, but nevertheless it was held in the eye of the prophet, that was reflective of their experience. And when other people read it, it wasn't meant that it should be mimicked like that Navi, but rather that they should read it before learning Torah. So too, Kainhu kol hakasuv b'sefer hazohar v'kitvei ha'arizal, ukedome lahem min hanestarus asher laHashem Elokeinu. Af shehem ha'irichu b'devreihem yoter v'tafsu la'atzom l'shonos acherim, Mikol makom ein shum nafka mina bein sipor merkava v'kisei kamara adam yoshev alav shebesefer Yechezkel l'sipor partzufim kedmus adam ve'evarav u'pu'ulos adam mizivug b'chibor v'nishok u'kedome hamuskar b'kitvei ha'arizal v'shar ta'alumos b'sefer hazohar. Says Rav Tzadok, the writings of the Arizal are nothing more than that. They are conveying what this Navi, this Tzaddik, the Arizal saw, and the way that he beheld the shape of the worlds, and the conveying of exactly what he beheld, but it's no different than what all of the Nevi'im before him came to do. It was the description. V'inyan iser hamasira shezacharnu chazal hu inyan acher ki ein karui masira elamasha ha'adam moser lechaveru k'derech masiras chayfetz shu acharei kein biyad chaveru kamo shehayatchila biyado shel zeh. And so Rav Tzadok says the Masira of the Chachma is not just giving over the ideas, the external ideas that are written by the Arisal, no matter how profoundly real and rooted and fundamental they actually are. That's something else. The true expression of Masira is that when a person learns to receive it truly in their hands, which is that they should come to understand the narrative of Pnimiyas HaTorah, and then they come to understand and contemplate it within their own wisdom and their own feelings, and how they explain it to themselves in their own seichel, that's already going to be part of what the Masira of the Chachma is. Velozu haderech shehisig ha'arizal osan hadvarim. Shadavar yaduahu, meaning the Arizal was not just conveying truths that he had received. The Arisal was not just writing down ideas that he had received, but rather shahadavar yadua shehu lo himtzia lo mashalom lahalbish devarav. De'im kein lama bachar lo b'mashalom ha'elu. The Arisal didn't just choose metaphors to explain what he felt he was grasping, but rather there's something very specific to the metaphors that the Arizal is giving us. Gam vadai tzarich biloi zman atzum lazeh lachkor ich lahalbish devarim b'mashal sheyeh b'mechuvan l'nimshal. If the Arizal was just trying to find the mashal, if the Arizal was just trying to find metaphors to convey some truth that was drawn down to him from a previous generation, so then why this mashal versus that mashal? And there's many, many ways to convey the mashals. What makes the mashalim of the Arizal real? What is the fundamental bond and grounding, gravitational source of significance that rests at the core of them? Aval kol hasagosav haya bederech tzipia benistaros v'hu ra'a kol hamare hazeh kederech shera'a yecheskel hamerkava. But rather, everything that Arizal conveys to us was by way of the speculative contemplation of that which is hidden, the dveikus of the Arizal. He saw this image. This is what he saw. He beheld HaKadosh Baruch Hu through this lens, the same way that Yecheskel Hanavi beheld the Merkava. The Arizal didn't need to interpret them and find what the inner meaning was. Because to convey the matters in a way that they're going to be understood for each and every person from my own inner experience of godliness, that's not Sitrei Torah. Sitrei Torah is the inner experience of godliness within myself. Conveying them to others is already something else. That's teaching Torah. The Arizal wasn't developing metaphors that can now be taught. He was conveying exactly what he beheld, and because the Arizal beheld them, they become fundamentally rooted, as the Leshem says, because Ein Kamoha Arizal, and he was a Gilui Meshamayim Mechadash since the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and until the Baal Shem Tov. That these were the Nistaros She'ein Kol Echad Yachol Leida Klal Ka'amur. What the Arizal was being masig was the innermost secrets that cannot be described or shared with anybody. Aval hadvarim hayu muvanim elav be'emes k'moishahu. The Arizal did not need to understand whether they were true or not. They were fundamentally true because they emerged in his mind as such. Because he had the true awareness of the yichud ilah, which is the recognition where the mensch comes to the recognition that they are just a chelek elokai mimal mamish, that they're just an extension of the infinite. And it's this form of knowing that a person has to come to know all of those things that are unknown to them. That a person cannot come to understand the true nature of these things unless they have tasted the true taste of true unity within themselves, which is the hasaga me'ein ruach hakodesh and nevuah. It's impossible to write this all down and convey it to text in which each and every person can understand it. The Arizal was a gilui. The Arizal gave us, once the Arizal gave us these metaphors, once the Arizal gave us these giluyim, these are the only way that we can possibly begin to grasp the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But what the Arizal was doing was conveying to us the exact way in which he beheld it within the wisdom of his chachma and the wisdom of his bina. deliba, gazing deeply into the depth of the understanding of the heart. Leros b'merkava mamish kiroa be'enav, to see the merkava, to see these things taking shape within a person's experiencing as if they're seeing it with their own eyes. The goal is to come and behold these true revelations that the Arisal conveyed to us exactly as the Arisal did, with the deep secret of the innermost kavana of our own hearts. So what Rav Tzadok is conveying, is that the Arisal gives us his vision that he beheld. And because the Arisal was who he was, the vision that the Arisal beheld becomes the marker in which we can all begin to have a grasp of what it means to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But the goal of the Arisal was to awaken within each and every individual the ability to come to that place of Hasaga on their own, to come to that place of the inner Dvekas, of learning the Torah of Kabbalah, al-pi, the light of Hasidus. The light of Hasidus is coming to be Mahapech, the Torah of Kabbalah, from a Torah to a Torah of the heart, to a place where all of this is taking shape within my mind at any given moment. We have a statement like this also, which is hard to understand, from Rav Tzadok HaKohen Lublin in Parshas Naso and Kri Tzadok, where he says that in truth, all of the kavanos, all of the intentions and the processes that Shar HaKavanos describes from the Arizal, all of that is coming to describe the intentionality of one day's grasp, a grasp of one day's avoda. Again, highlighting this hyper-subjective reality in which Rav Tzadok HaKohen Lublin is telling us to find the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu within our minds. But again, it has to be understood. I don't think, and I think that's very important, I don't think Rav Tzadok means that the writings of the Arisal, Rahman al-Itzlan, were only for one day and that there should be other models that are developed in order to accomplish what the writings of the Arisal couldn't accomplish. But rather, the writings of the Arisal are the structure which have become the fundamental structure by dint of the force of the Arisal himself. The Ein Kamohu, that he had the darga of a Navi, that nobody is coming to push away the Arizal, God forbid. He was a Navi Yisrael, the light of Yitzchak. Nobody's arguing with the Arizal. And the Tekifos of the Arizal is the Gilui Hashlishi of the Yechidei Hadoros. So in that place, those models, those metaphors that are real, the mamish kavyachol of the system of the Arizal, is open to a renewed experience in each and every day. That the kavanos are there for a person to renew themselves each and every day. If a person thinks they can take the kavanos and the partsufim and all of the pratim of the Arizal, and what they knew and felt today is going to be enough for them to apply for tomorrow, then they've missed the point. But rather, they have to be reinvigorated and renewed each and every moment. And this is very important because there's a lot of people who learn a lot of Kabbalah, and a person can be a fundamental Talmud Chacham in Kabbalah, as Rav Yitzchak Kaduri said, but they don't know anything about Kabbalah. They don't know anything about the ability to awaken oneself to the new felt experience that is expressed within the vessels of the Arizal in a renewed way perpetually, coming to terms with what Rav Sadok is saying, that we have to draw the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and that personal revelation into the vessels that the tzaddikim have given us. And this is what Rav Tzadok HaKohen Lublin continues, and he explains as follows, furthering this notion that he's describing. And this is going to be in Dover Tzedek. Again, Dover Tzedek, each sefer, we're not going to go through a biography of each of these svarim, but each has its own heartbeat. And none of these makoros are meant to be exclusive. There's so many places to begin this process, but we're looking at it just from a few of the main sources that I feel are significant. When we look at Daf Kuf Lamed Beis in Dover Tzedek, what Tzadok says as follows. It's talking about Katnas HaMoichin, what it meant for Klal Yisrael to be in a state of Katnas HaMoichin, a concept that comes from the world of the Arizal, from the systems of the Arizal, from Ibur, Yenika, Moichin, all of these encyclopedic and meaning descriptive processes that all spiritual expression is taking shape from. So Rav Tzadok is going to use this reference to Moichin de Katnas as a way of trying to, again, dig deeper into his understanding of what the Arizal is, and more importantly, what we have to be with the writings of the Arizal, that we have to be the renewed content, the renewed light within the self-same content of the Arizal, day in, day out, moment to moment. Zak the Heiliger of Tzadok. Just like we can understand when it comes to contemplating all of the metaphors that have to do with human anatomy in the Eitz Chaim of the Arizal. Hainu ki kol hakolchos sheba adam hakol me Hashem yisparach Umishamakir ze be'emes la'amiso, as shoifebor oro yisparach habilti bal tachlis. What the Arisal was trying to teach us there is that when a person comes to understand that all of their feelings and all of their strength and all of the qualities of self are all directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that the part of the self is not in fact actually separate from the all, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, someone who comes to realize that my separation is an expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's unity, someone who comes to understand this on the depth of the truth, at that point HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Shofeh Bo'oro Yisparach HaBilti Bal Tachlis. The light of Chaya comes down, the light of the Makif comes down. I'm renewed with a new sense of infinitude that extends from beyond my graspability. V'zehu Tachlis Habriya. This is the ultimate purpose of creation. Lihiyos hasagas Hashem Yisparach mitzamsemet b'tzuras ha'adam shabara. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to be grasped in accordance with the contraction that he engaged in the shape of the human being themselves. The human being is the tzimtzum. We are the tzimtzum. Our minds are the tzimtzum that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has been mitzamsem, and it is in our minds that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to be revealed in accordance with our sense of our own selves. V'zenikrat tzimtzum ein sof. This is the secret of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's contraction of his infinite light. Shetzamsem atzmo v'hasagaso bekerev leiv ha'adam. That he condensed himself into a bite-sized, manageable, quintessential expression of a chelek that contains the whole within the heart of each and every individual. The sidre hatzimtzum zeh hu kefi sidre hasagas ha'adam. And the level and the gradations of that simsum are going to be in accordance with the levels of the grasp of that individual in their mind, in terms of how much they come to grasp the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is available to them. And moichin the katnus of this individual, what does moichin the katnus mean? Listen to this miraculously modern metaphor that the Rav Tzadok is giving us. What are moichin the katnus? Moichin the katnus shall kol adam me Yisrael be'inyan hayahadus v'hasagas be'elikus v'zenik moichin the katnus shall Hashem Yisparach. To the degree that my moichin the katnus, which is my small-mindedness when it comes to my relationship with my own Jewishness as well as my grasping of godliness, that is my moichin the katnus, and in my moichin the katnus I am reflecting the moichin the katnus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because it's within me that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to be revealed, within my own processing. V'chein kol kiyotzebo, and this is true for all of the metaphors. V'zeh davar amok. This is a very deep thing. HaKoil kol sitrei chachmas HaKabbalah, that includes within itself the entirety of the chachma of the Kabbalah. She'ein meisrin ela lemishu chacham umevin meidaiso, that the way it has to be conveyed is to an individual as the ability of understanding from within their own hearts, of owning their own self-wisdom, from within their own knowledge. Sheheyir lo Hashem Yisparach, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has shined it down into the individual's mind. The efshar lahasbiro klal. Rak bilishoinim shoinim kederach haTorah lak b'pamim misgalis mila menertika kedi isa b'sabed mishpatim ayin lo sham. Each and every person's grasp has to be in accordance with their own language, but as the Sabed Mishpatim says, there's new languages that emerge which become fundamental, and that's the language of the Arisal. The HaChacham tzarich lehispoinein ma she'Hashem yisparach meir lo leprakim derech arai v'ha'avara b'hasaga v'ha'kara shebemoyach v'libo umiyad ne'elam. What a person has to attune themselves to, says R Sadok, is the awareness that it's the wisdom that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends into my heart. It's my grappling with reality. It's my orientation towards reality that is going to give the stamp to the way that these concepts are going to be seen. And it has to be with a tekifus, it has to be with a confidence, it has to be with the sense that the neshama is an illuminated thing. The famous teaching from Rav Tzadok HaKohen in Tzidkas HaTzadik is that Keshem she'adam sarich lahamin ba'Kadosh Baruch Hu, just as a person has to believe in God, kach heim tzrichim lahamin ba'atzmam, so too a person has to believe in themselves. Why? How are the two interconnected b'chlal? But what we're seeing, it's a far deeper concept than people typically ascribe it to, because what Rav Tzadok is saying there is that it's two sides of the same coin. That my own inner experience is the processing of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's revelation down here in accordance with the tzimtzum of my mind and my heart and my body, to the degree that no other mind, body, or heart has the capacity of conveying that particular form of revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That each and every person has to be able to say Shaddai, that there's enough for me and I have my own personal shlichus. And if I don't align myself to that, then that revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to be revealed. That's what Rav Tzadok is saying over here in terms of what the Kabbalah of the Arisal is. Again, reminding us that the The Arisal is not meant to just be read. We can read it. There's a kiyum in reading the words of the Arisal, but the ikr is to illuminate it with the own inner feeling that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is descending from the infinite place of his light down to the lowest place, which is our own experience of the tzimtzum in our own heart. Here, Rav Tzadok HaKohen explains in an amazing lashon as well at the very beginning of Dover Tzedek, on Os Aleph. He says as follows. What is the person? What is the person? What does it mean that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is present within a person? What does it mean that a Kadosh Baruch Hu was Mitzamsim himself? Zakter of Tzadok. And because HaKadosh Baruch Hu desired in his infinite wisdom that his creations, us, our own minds, our own subjectivity, our own inner experience and framing of reality, where our thinking becomes the encounter with the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where my framing of reality becomes the Yichud itself. Hashem wanted us to benefit from that light. So he was Mitzamsem Yisbarach Ha'araso Shetiyeh Mugveles Mitzumtzemes V'lo Betokef V'chozek Kolkach. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided, in order to rest himself within the heart of each and every Jewish person, where that heart can be transformed into the site of the Giloy of the Neshama and the Chaya, the Chachma and the Neviah. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Mitzamsim himself and his illumination so that it can be measured and contained in accordance with the strength that each and every heart can handle. And that his yashvus within the mind is what's referred to as the tzimtzum. And it's mitzumtzum, HaKadosh Baruch Hu conceals himself into the heart of each and every yid. Aval ikir v'shoyresh asher mimenu hushtalu behe'elem, ki ha'hashtala hagluya min ha'em ha'molidas ava behe'elem ba ha'hashtala min ha'av shemekabelas mimenu v'loy noda, u'min ha'etzem ha'or ha'nivdal shu ha'moilid kol chelik v'chelik eloikai b'koyach v'noisnim la'ashchina shu koyach ha'tzimtzum. What Rav Tzadok says is, what is the ikr person? The ikr person is the rootedness that it has above in the infinite, which is a secret of the essence of the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is removed from us. But then through the secret of Tzimtzum, it expresses itself in accordance with each and every chelek, which is the chelek Eloikai Mimal Mamish, within each and every person, to the degree that HaKadosh Baruch Hu separates himself into each and every one of our hearts in accordance with the chelek Eloikai Mimal, that partial grasp of infinitude, which is still finite in its expression on the level of the neshama. And that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu enables us to live in this world with. And the goal is to break open that measured form of infinitude and to extend it and to show how it's fundamentally rooted in the original form of infinitude, which is drawn down by Chachma itself. Rotzel Lomar, says Rav Tzadok, which means to say, HaKoach sheyasad Hashem yisbarach sheyetzumtzum v'yochel etzeis lepoel nirgash or hasagaso yisbarach b'leiv b'nei adam v'osa koach hashchina v'hamoyli d'motzi lepoel zeh perush aviv zeh HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Shechina HaKadoisha is the element that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has allowed to descend down into each and every person's neshama, each and every person's heart. And it's in that place where we experience the full nature of the tzimtzum, meaning the Shechina HaKadoisha, which is the heart of each and every yid, which is our awareness of godliness by way of concealment or by way of revelation. That's the Koyach HaTzimtzum, the heart of the individual, the Chachma and the Bina of the individual is the place that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Mitzamsem. That is the Chalal HaPanui, as Rabbi Nachman describes. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to be revealed there and emerge into actuality by way of the emergence from a state of potential infinitude into actualized expression, and that's the Shechina. And Zakter of Tzadok, what's the purpose of this? Why is Hashem revealing himself to us in this way? Hine kol ma'isa hamitzvos so al yedei chelek chayim hashoichin b'soichenu anu oivdem la'melech hakavod v'HaKadosh Baruch Hu anivdal. The way that we serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way that it's reasonable for a Jewish person to now come and serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu is because we contain within ourselves a chelek Eloikai Mimal. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has cut off, so to speak. He was migzar milan dikshoit. He cut off a chelek of himself, so to speak. And he was mitzamsim himself into the possibility of chalakim. And each chelek is so expressive that hatoifes chelek min ha'etzem, toifes is hakol. And within each and every person's chelek Eloikai Mimal, we have the ability of uncovering more and more. And that's the secret of the Maisa Mitzvos that we do. Every ounce of being a human being in this world is to own the limited expression of infinitude that contains itself within the boundaries of Bina, and to open it up to the unlimited nature of Chachma that is descending down into it at every moment, to be Megala, the Koyach of the Chaya and the Yechida, and add more infinitude into the finite nature of our mind, where nothing changes other than the expansion of our mind. And we come to see that everything on the outside is what it is, but I am perpetually shifting and growing in my mind, creating new worlds, new vistas, new perspectives, perspectives, new frames of thinking, which are real and are going up directly to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and being registered within the realm of positive thoughts that have an impact on Geula and on bringing Mashiach and on all of the things that mean something. There's a tachlis to everything. Zakter of Tzadok. Hainu kitachlis hashlemus. What is the main way that we express shlemus, fullness? Hu hosafos heskalis or Hashem yisparach beriboy yoter murgash ad ki kol atzmoisai tamarna Hashem mikamocha. The fullness of the individual in this world is to increase and reveal more and more of the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that rests within the innermost point of their heart by way of extending it to the degree that every element of the body should feel it. V'al zeh tziva Hashem yisparach chukim u'mishpatim asher kefi sidrei ha'chachma ha'elyona al yadam yizdachachu ha'nefashos v'halavavos v'yasiru ha'masachim ha'mavdilim. And this is what Torah and mitzvos is, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu in His infinite wisdom has decided that these particular actions, these particular modalities and tendencies are going to be the things strong enough to refine the soul and clarify the heart and move away all of the concealment valves that block me and the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ad sheyurgash yoter v'yisrabe hachelek elokai mima'al shebekirbo. And Rav Tzadok says, so that I should feel an extension and an emergence of a deepening power of the chelek elokai mima'al that exists within me. Meaning to say, hainu sheyulad bekerev libo od chelek or v'hasagas Hashem yisparach b'chol avoda v'avoda. I should reveal moreness within who I am. I should reveal the endlessness that rests within my heart and my neshama, which becomes a receptacle for the chaya, for the light of chachma, which carries with it the light of Keser itself. And I can come to extend the parameters of the self, to reveal more within the less, in the secret of miyat hamachzeka samaruba. And this all takes place by way of Chachma and Bina. Od or noisef ba'or hamitzumsum bekerev hasagas libo lahasig yoter me'amisus or v'shefa Hashem yisparach al pnei tevel. What does Hashem do? He wants us to receive more, so He adds another chelik of or and another chelik of receiving the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu within each and every avoda that we engage in. And through the unity of Chachma and Bina, we draw it down so that there's an additional light that continues to be maintained and contained and mitzumsum within the grasp of our heart and our mind, so that we can grasp more of the truthfulness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the perpetual vitality that is perpetually coming down. This is the tachlis of the Or HaMitzumsum. The Or HaMitzumsum is to extend itself, is to grow, that we have to grow in the limited expression in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu expresses to us. And this is, says Rav Tzadok, he continues, and he says, this is where a person experiences a prichas haneshama, where the soul soars, it flies, it uncovers more strength within itself. The inability to fly, the inability for the tzaddikim to fly, the inability for the tzaddikim to understand the secret of the knafayim that they're going to have when Mashiach Tzidkenu comes, is that they can perpetually go from level to level, from strength to strength. But the flying, the soaring takes place when the neshama understands that its limited expression is in truth not limited. It is a limited revelation of an infinite reservoir of moreness that rests hidden within the very depths of the heart, and that nesiv shelo yadaya ayat, the shar hanun, which is the light of chachma that is perpetually dripping into the realm of bina, which is perpetually renewing that finite expression of infinitude with a new infinite expression of perpetual growth. Perush, says Rav Tzadok, haprecha hu shetakubel beratzon lefan of yisparach. The growth and the soaring and the growth and expression of the soul is the sense of being received, is the sense of being accepted by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ad sheyolad tekef bekirbo shefa hasaga mechudeshes, to the degree that immediately a person is filled with a new sense of insight, a new sense of connection, a new sense of renewal. And this only takes place by the unity of Chachma and Bina, because Bina itself is the neshama, which is infinite in its nature, but it's contained within the realm of the pnimi. That's the secret of Bina. But when I connect Chachma to Bina and I draw the Chachma down into Bina, I reveal the infinite source of that finite expression of Bina, and in that place, through the yichud of Abba and Ima, of Chachma and Bina, that's going to be a new grasp. This is not going to be done by way of an action without any investiture of emotional self within it. Adrab, it takes place within the space of Hergesh itself, within the emotional territory of the individual itself. Rak al yedei hargashas hachayim shebelev. It only takes place by way of the encounter with life and the feeling of life at the depth of the heart. That a person takes the time to contemplate the life that is expressing itself within themselves. And they come to contemplate the nature of the life. And immediately when I reach into those places of being aware of what Zah is, of what Malchus is, I come into that place of Hasag of Memala and Saivev, Asher Loi Tichre Kol Berach, and that it's only HaKadosh Baruch Hu who has the light, and I have to be mevatel myself. And when I become aware of the makif, when I become aware of the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is beyond me and I want to draw more into me, I have the ability to draw down more. There's a deep desire and a yearning that is awoken that I want more and more of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the depth of love. And it's with this that the Maisa is going to go above, and a person is going to have more of a grasp, more of a grasp, more of a grasp. This is the secret of schar mitzvah mitzvah. That the person themselves becomes the site of the revelation of the mitzvah, as the Leshem and R Sadok are very makusher in the way that they're describing things. That it's the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in us, awakening us to do more. That's the biggest proof that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to do more. It's moving within my heart. Even now, I can awaken myself to the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is right here, begging to be revealed more and more within my own mind. And each and every one of us have the ability to say that. The question arises when we look at something like this, and we're coming to a close, Be'ezras Hashem, on the first lav of this, is if all of this is taking place within the mind. And yes, we've stressed that the Arizal's metaphors are fundamental in their ontology because the Arizal was the Arizal, and he was the third Giloi, and therefore once the Arizal is Magala, those shapes and perspectives through which we have to view reality in Achdas Hashem, they're no longer optional. Like R Nachman says that once the Tzaddik Emes is born, before the Tzaddik Emes is revealed, the person doesn't need the Tzaddik Emes. After the Tzaddik Emes is revealed, the person needs the Tzaddik Emes. Before the Arizal, a person didn't need the Meshalom of the Arizal. After the Arizal, a person needs the Meshalom of the Arizal. As it goes with the Yechidei Hadoros. Nevertheless, Rav Tzadok is not, God forbid, coming to deny that on any element. Rav Tzadok is expressing the fundamental need to respect the writings of the Arizal, as is clear in all of his writings, the bittul muchletes that any tzaddik has to the tzaddikim that came before him. Yet, nevertheless, what Rav Tzadok is intimating towards is ultimately what's taking shape in the transformation of the Lamde Shakap, of the Olam HaYeshiva, and transforming it into a new form of an intellectual chasidus that enables the mind's intellectual processes and contemplation and coming to terms with itself and owning its own perspective on reality as being the very site of revelation, where each and every person can live as if they're receiving the Torah from on high in every moment, Betsina, upstairs in the attic of the mind, as Rav Tzadok did, and it doesn't diminish any element of the light that is expressed. The light of Rav Tzadok is expressed further and further and further, and his fire is also a fire that burns into the coming of Mashiach. But Rav Tzadok also offers us precision in terms of how to understand these things. So here we're going to look at a sefer called Sichos Malachei Hasharis from Rav Tzadok. And here Rav Tzadok is going into a very, very, very powerful expression of what it means to relate to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That how can we connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? This is on Daf Lamed Daled in Sichos Malachei Hasharis. Kimash HaNefesh mityacheses lehistamos al Hashem Yisbarach hu el Hashem hazeh shel Hashem Yisbarach. V'etzelemer mitzad shu bala koiches kulam. Haynu beheyois tachlis habriya hu ha'adam shel kol ha'olam kuloi nivra b'shvilo k'mo shenispar la'el medivrei Arisal. So Tzadok is saying, where's the point in which we draw Kadosh Baruch Hu down most into ourselves? It's the Yichud of Havaya and Elokim Havaya and Adnus, drawing down the infinite light of Kadosh Baruch Hu down into the concealment of our own experiential grasp, which is our mind, our heart, and our bodies. And one of the main ways that we mimic HaKadosh Baruch Hu is that just as HaKadosh Baruch Hu contains all possibility within himself, so too each and every chelek of Nishmas Yisrael, the chelek Elokim Yimal, contains all aspects of godliness within itself. So just as HaKadosh Baruch Hu contains all within himself, so too HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals within the partiality of the human self that they also contain all of the potency of spirituality. And it's in this holographic, fractalized reality that there's a real connection between the soul and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because only the Chelek Eloi Kamimal is that secret of HaSamech Bechelko, is that secret of HaToifes Chelek Min HaEtzem, Toifes is HaEtzem Kulo. This is what Rav Tzadok is explaining. He says that the Yichud takes place within the mind of the individual, within the mind, within the nefesh itself, within the Chelek Eloi Kamimal. The Hainu says Rav Tzadok, Shaha'adam hu koilel gam kein kol prate koiches abruim hanimtzayim ba'olam u'ka'asher ha'adam makir v'yodea kavod Hashem yisbarach v'gadlo hari kol ha'koiches ha'olamim makirim kulam kved Hashem. Because in truth, the entire reality and the entire existence rests within the mind of the individual. It's not some ontological, externalized, real thing that has to be contemplated and engaged with, but rather it is the perceptual reality in which those worlds are emerging in the mind of the individual. That's the reality. And what a person is doing in their inner reality is going to be reflective externally on the outer reality, because everything is going to change. That the individual is a chelek of HaKadosh Baruch Hu from above. And just as HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Bala Koiches Kulam and the Shem of Elokim gives shape to all of the particularity of the world, and there's no particular that is not contained within the general composite of all of those particulars. So too, it's like the nefesh and the guf, shekol mashi yesh beklal. Anything that exists in the general perspective of the world, yesh beprat, it exists within the particular, the chelek mimenu, and even in the chelek, just as we see by the seed of a fruit tree, that the seed of the fruit tree contains the potential of everything that is going to emerge in that tree afterwards, as we see, and it wouldn't be filled without that kernel and that garin. So too, every soul is a quintessential expression. The chelek is a fractal, it's not a fraction. Once we understand that the chelek of the neshama, the nafshos ha-Yisraelim nikru banim l'Hashem lekechem, the soul of the Jewish people are banim l'Hashem lekechem, or like the stones of Har Sinai, that when you looked at the tiny stones of Har Sinai, you would come to find that there was the entirety of Har Sinai over there. Zakter Tzadok. And for this reason, it's not by naught that the original thinkers referred to as the human being as a small world, because in truth, each and every individual in their own minds is an ak and an abiyah. It's a spiritual reality. It's a spiritual existence. It's a spiritual world. And these are deep secrets. It's also expressed in Sefer Yetzirah that each person has their own world, and each person has their own time, and each person has their own soul connection. Each person has their own world in and of themselves. And Rav Tzadok says, I found this afterwards in Tikkun Sadi Tes and Tikkun Zohar, that Halchi Shamina dechol Tzadik v'Tzadik islei oilim b'fnei atzmo v'dagufa debarnashti itkari oilim katan ad kan l'shaynai, that each and every person, every tzaddik, each person is a big tzaddik, has the ability to hold the entirety of the worlds within themselves, to the degree that each person can be referred to as a small world. So we're seeing that each and every person is a monad. Each and every person's mind is the full frame in which existence and infinitude is going to be revealed through existence. And the only difference is that each person has a guf and a nefesh. The guf is the chelek of pirud in their world, separation and simsum, and the nefesh and the neshama, and all that is contained within that is a level of the revelation of light. Zakter Tzadok. Ubiyrzek kol echad mishuna mechaveru b'das k'may she'amru b'brachos v'hadasu klal tzuras nefesh ha'adam v'yisraelu min ha'behema v'zeh mizeh, that we're mishuna zeh mizeh b'maru b'kol. We're meshuna in our das, in the tzura of our nefesh. Each and every person is different. Each and every person is their own reality. Meaning to say, each and every person is the site in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu's revelation is going to be taking shape in accordance with the awakening of our own heart, our own minds, living within our own inner spiritual reality, and satisfied with what we have going on internally, not because I have to learn to be enough and get by with enough, but I have literally everything that I possibly need is taking shape in here. The outside, which is what appears most real, is in fact least real, and the inside, which is what appears to be least real, is in fact most real. This is what Rav Tzadok is going to explain to us. Each and every person has their own different das. We have our own different perspective, our own world. That even though everybody is engaged with the same reality, everybody is looking at the same reality, nevertheless, each and every person is beholding and grasping the same reality in a very different way. And each and every person has their own framework in which they're going to perceive reality. So too, there's going to be this many worlds. And even though there's a general consensus about how things are, each and every person is going to have their own world, and each and every person is going to be receiving the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in their own way. This is what Avram Avinu came to understand. And each and every person has all elements within themselves. Meaning to say, each and every person has everything within themselves, but nevertheless, they are who they are and not some other thing by way of the secret of the formation of the particular expression of the all within the Chelek Eloi Kamimal. Each and every person is going to have a different emotional valence, want something different, because even though everybody is the same, nevertheless, each and every self-same expression of the all within that radical secret of the part is going to be different in exactly what it is that it desires. And once we understand, says Rav Tzadok, on Daf Lamed Zayin, that each and every one of us are a chelek Eloi Kamimal that contains the all, our job is to draw down the all and moreness into our lives. Rak koyach echad hu beprat klula mikol hakolchos dim shekoyach echad prati min habriya hu kalul min kol hakolchos. Each and every particularized point is a fractal that contains everything. Ume'acher she'osa koach hu gam ken koyach nafshi chelek Eloi Kamimal. And because that chelek that we contain within ourselves is ultimately a revelatory expression of a chelek Eloi Kamimal, im ken gam hu bal so too are we contained of all of the kochos. That just as HaKadosh Baruch Hu holds all of the kochos together, so too we have all of them. And each and every nefesh is different, and each and every nefesh has a chelek Eloi Mima'al shesham hakol misached, where everything is unified. Ulechein gam osa koach atzmo, and all of the individualized kochos are going to be very different for each and every individual. And we're going to see, says Rav Tzadok, that each and every person has the unique ability to understand the light of godliness in their own way. And he continues to describe why it is that there's a difference of feeling for each person. Why is it that each person is going to be forced to live their own inner reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in their world, if when we look at the outside world, it all seems to be the same? So Rav Tzadok comes here and says that we have to transvaluate the entire perspective in which we look at reality. When it comes to external perspective, provable external reality is most certain. Felt existence within the heart is less certain, but also certifiable. But the thoughts and the contemplation and the dimyon and the imagination of the mind, that seems least real and least graspable. And therefore, we validate and make very real that which is felt, and we diminish the significance of that which is unfelt. But from a perspective of unity and spirituality, says Rav Tzadok, the opposite is true. In truth, the thing that is most real is the unfelt thoughts of the mind, the place where the chaya is entering into the neshama, where chachma is merging into bina itself. And then comes the hargashas halev, which even though it's spiritual, it still can be felt a little bit, but even though it can still be felt a little bit, it's still very real. And then when you get to the outside of the world, which is felt in its intensity, that's the place where we have to deny the fundamental existence of it. It's not denying the reality that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has created, but it's realizing that the entire purpose of the reality that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has created externally is so that my mind as a subjective individual can fundamentally come to the deep awareness that atahu koydem shenivra olam, atahu sha'achar nivra. You before creation, you after creation, all that exists is you, the fundamental awareness that nothing exists other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chvoidoi u'ba'atzmo kaviyachol. With that awareness, the self becomes a true receptacle of the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it's in that place of that unfelt, unreal place that we're actually creating the real work. And this is where Rav Tzadok is actually coming to a really, really important clarification. That once we've described all of this and how it's all taking shape in the subjective orientation of the mind and the heart, says Rav Tzadok, don't think, God forbid, that all of these worlds, all of these realities that the Arisal describes, that the mind is soaring through and that the mind is living with, that they're just figments of the imagination or dreams that are conjured up or thoughts that are meaningless in their core. And And how can we say that each and every tzaddik has a world, but you're saying that it's an imaginary world, that our worlds are imaginary, and that we're just imagining things, and what's happening on the outside is the self-same, and that's what's sturdy, but the thoughts in my mind are the thing that are imaginary? It can't be. Aval da, says Rav Tzadok. כי אף על פי שכפי הנראה לעין הבשרי הוא מאומס יותר מה שנראה בפועל במעשה יותר פחוס מאומה ממנו והמורגש בלב לבד ועוד יותר פחוס ממנו מחשבה שבמוח שאין מורגש ללב גם כן שדבר זהו דמיון ממש ואין כלום. That, like we just said, that in accordance with the externalized vision of the flesh, that which is more true is that which is more seen and more felt. And so the action which is going to be more seen and more felt is going to be most valuable, and a little bit less than that is going to be the emotions which are felt but not seen, and even less than that is going to be the mind which is not felt nor is it seen. Aval Chazal karu b'kama mekomos lahai alma alma de. But we know that Chazal have told us that there's a certain fraudulency and a falseness to this world. Not that it's not real, but it's real by way of a non-reality. It doesn't actually exist by way of actuality. Our job is to come to terms with the fact that the actuality of existence is in truth nothing other than the expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light. The truth of the matter is that it's different. That in accordance with the ascendant qualities of spirituality, the unfelt and unseen mind is higher than the unseen and unfelt heart, which is even higher than the felt and seen actions themselves. And it turns out that the opposite is true, that the actions of this world are what are imaginative, because imagination and falsehood just represent something that is not going to last forever. As it says in the pasuk, that truth is something that persists and contains itself, but falsehood is something that will disintegrate. And therefore, falsehood is expressed as something that is not going to be able to perpetuate itself. And therefore, all of the desires of this worldly flesh and this worldly existence are all untrue in the sense that they're not going to last forever, because the true Giloy is going to be Einon Movado. But down here, we have to understand that it is the demyonos and the machshava, the thinking models that we contemplate within our minds, that gives us the true access. So when a person is stuck in here, when a person is stuck down here, we come to assume that that which is real, and that which is not felt is not real. Aval haneshamos, but the souls themselves, because they're rooted and they're a partial expression that contains the all, because they're rooted in the infinite. The truth of the matter is that the contemplation of worlds in my mind, and the davening and the thoughts of spirituality and the thoughts of connection and the ritzonos and the good feelings, those are what's real. That those kochos are in truth that which is going to be real, those thoughts that I think in my mind, those holy thoughts. And when they're nivdal and separated from the olam hadimyon of the oma de shikra, of this world, or a person has merited to refine themselves in this world to feel the truthfulness of their own inner experience and to trust the worlds that they create in their lives, so then we come to understand that our inner worlds are what is real. And all of the worlds that I contemplate in my mind and that I imagine in my heart, they're all real. They're all real things, real places in which I encounter HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I don't need any more external validation than the inner experience of feeling more comfortable with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and my own framework and my own vision and how I relate to my own Yiddishkeit. Shari HaMachshava hu an-nefesh, the soul is the thought. V'hu kayemes la'ad, and that's what's most real. V'ruchniyusa v'klula b'kama oilamos ruchnim. There's many, many worlds there. Person has to see all of the worlds. L'chein amar rak l'chot tzaddik v'tzaddik. Only a tzaddik, someone who understands the hyper significance of their perspective, the hyper understanding of uncovering of seeing my world in my days, uncovering Gan Eden in my mind, because my mind is the place of the true revelation of Gan Eden. That's what's eventually going to reveal the truthfulness of our imaginations. And that's when we're able to break free and create a real connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world. These are all of the worlds. These are all of the worlds. It's the nefesh that's perpetually thinking. It means someone who has extricated themselves from needing to find validity in the externalization of things, but rather to uncover the reality of that which is thought rather than felt. Because the feeling and the non-feeling of it doesn't mean that it's non-existent. It just means that it's existent by way of not feeling it. And in that place of nothingness, in that place of a real connection, a person is going to be uncover the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in their lives. Now, think there was one more makor that I wanted to go over to end this nakuda, of what R Sadok is giving us. And it's the end of Chaimet Mincha. When it comes to contemplating HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when it comes to thinking about the names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when it comes to thinking about Havaya and Adnos, in truth, this is the Shechina that rests within the heart of each and individual. The Shechina is my grasp and my graspability of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in my heart. What I can't grasp, what I can't fundamentally reach, is the fact that there's an element of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that is beyond my ability. But then when I draw that light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in, and I draw that light further and further into my heart, that's the element of Shavisi Hashem Lenegdi Tamid. When we're fundamentally aware in the deep joy that we have, when we're aware of the Shem Havaya, when we know, when we grasp that HaKadosh Baruch Hu fills all worlds. And it's literally like it was before the creation of the world. And everything after the creation of the world has not deviated even one iota from what was before the creation of the world. And there's no limitation, and there's nothing that separates us from him. And there's nothing blocking us. At that place, in that place, the Simcha is a true Simcha. And each and every person is experiencing these things in their own way. Everything is the same, the self and its encounter with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Echad Yachad Miyuchad. It's just two different lights. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is expressing himself into the mind of the individual. The mind of the individual is also an expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But he wants it to be split between the light that is revealing and the light that he has revealed in order to grasp the light that he is revealing. That we can grasp the Shechina within ourselves. That we come to a place of yira and shame in the face of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when we grasp the unlimited light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we draw down more simcha of the fundamental purpose of what we're doing in this world and why we're actually engaged in the mitzvos. This is the secret of the yichud and the unity between Kudsha B'richu v'Shchinte, meaning to say lahasig biyoter hasagas Hashem yisbarach b'havanas alev v'amoach, to know more about HaKadosh Baruch Hu in my heart and in my mind, to believe more. Hainu sheyatoisif or hashchina etzlo, I should have more revelation of the Shechina by me. Rotzadamo or v'hasagas alehus ha'shechenes bekirbo, I should extend the territory of divine knowledge that I hold within my own mind. Hu al yedei sheyasachid etzlo b'or habilti b'tachlis, when I connect myself to that infinite place where it's perpetually moving down into the secret of the chaya that's perpetually coming down. The or habilti b'tachlis she'ein lefan of shum davar mikol b'ruaya olam. There's no concealment in that place. We are the concealed revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What we have to become a receptacle for is the concealed, the concealed of the concealed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that's revealing itself through each and every particularized form and each and every particularized vessel of each and every soul in accordance with that simsum. With this seriousness of understanding the processes of our thoughts, with the proper bittul to the Torah of the tzaddikim who give us the frameworks in which we can cultivate those thoughts. We don't have to be the Arisal. We can't be the Arisal, and we don't have to be, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed the Arisal. We don't have to be the Baal Shem Tov. We don't have to be the Gra, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed the tzaddikim. We don't have to come to understand what R Sadok is coming to convey to us. We have to believe fundamentally that this therapeutic plan is going to be the most likely one to help me extricate myself and untether myself from the stuckness in this world, to come to behold the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that rests within my heart. From here we come to understand why a person like this can interpret their dreams. From here we understand the koyach of the kahuna of R Sadok, the confidence, the kedusha, to say what he needed to say, because in truth, our generation couldn't survive without the Torah of R Sadok HaKohen Lublin. As a fundamental expression of a continuity of the Torah of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, this is the refuah that's makdim to the makkah. This is the Torah of Geula, the Torah that gives each and every person a taste of to see my world in my days, not because I have to just be okay with that little bit, but because there's nothing more than that little bit. And when a person comes to live with that ashiras and das and the simcha chelkis of grasping more and more HaKadosh Baruch Hu in their minds, then it's going to be mispashit bachutz. Then it's uparatzta yama vaken matzvona vanegva, and it's mispashit hachutza, because the light is simply something that illuminates itself naturally. And when we can accept upon ourselves the koyach in which the Kohen Lublin gave us, that self-confidence of knowing the innermost point of the Jewish neshama, we can come to find HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our lives on a daily basis, on a moment-to-moment basis, and bring the geula to ourselves and the world, Be'ezras Hashem.